Spoiler alert, Eddie Hall's new whip is much more unique than I first expected. Hello my friends and welcome to History Legends. Young Padawan, you thought you'd seen everything on the internet. But did you ever wonder what it would be like to order McDonald's from the drive-thru from a tank? A freaking tank! Or how about ordering from a KFC and then reverse parking that beast? To be honest, I feel the anxiety of that woman in that car. This is Eddie Hall from England, one of the strongest men on the planet. He won many titles, like the UK's strongest man for 6 years in a row and the world's strongest man in 2017. But here's the thing, it wasn't enough for him to be the human embodiment of a tank. He had to buy one. It's like these stocking dolls, a tank within a tank. And the worst is, after watching this, I get so many more questions. How does he even fit in it? How is it even legal for him to drive this? How much did it cost him? This is what you'll discover in this video. But personally, what intrigued me the most was, what is this model of this tank? And to a military nerd like me, it doesn't even look like a tank, more like an armored fighting vehicle. But then, which one? Obviously by its design, the rough edges, and this cardboard box style, you know it's British. Just look how similar it is to World War II British tanks like the Crusader or that one, the Centurion, a tank produced right after World War II. You know, that triangle-shaped turret just smells British. So let's take a look at this weird vehicle. Tank or armored vehicle. Eddie Hall calls this a tank. What's the difference anyway? The main difference between a tank and an armored fighting vehicle is their role on the battlefield. Historically, tanks were used to punch a hole in enemy lines, with infantry following under the protection of the tank. The method was designed to quickly strike and take up enemy positions as a result. Tanks are heavy armored tracked vehicles armed with heavy guns, able to deliver heavy firepower to enemy defenses or fight another tank. For this task, nowadays, the United Kingdom fields a main battle tank called the Challenger 2. Tanks, however, are vulnerable in certain terrains like forests, mountains, and urban environments. Especially when they're isolated or on their own, they can't see anything around. This is because they're extremely vulnerable to man-portable anti-tank weapons, like the RPG-7, or like we've seen in Ukraine, javelins and NLAWs. An armored fighting vehicle is used so infantry can protect and keep up with the tank. IFVs are lightly armored vehicles, usually tracked, but not always, armed with automatic cannons or light guns. While these vehicles may not be able to provide the same firepower as a tank, they're capable of protecting infantrymen from enemy fire while transporting them, which will then be able to support the tank in its advance. We're talking about mutual support. Meanwhile, armored fighting vehicles such as the new Ajax are capable of defending themselves. Ajax's CT-40 cannon and machine gun is designed to fire armor-piercing rounds capable of penetrating 140mm of hardened steel armor. Almost the same firepower as the biggest tanks of World War II. Now just by comparing and putting side by side the Challenger 2 and the Ajax armored fighting vehicle, just by looking at it we know that Eddie Hall's new whip is closer to an armored fighting vehicle. So let's take a look in that direction. The British military currently fields 767 warriors and 654 units of any model of the combat vehicle reconnaissance tracked class of vehicles, like the FV101 Scorpion, the FV102 Striker, the FV103 Spartan, or even the FV107 Scimitar. It has to be one of them. Let's process by elimination. It's certainly not the Striker or the Spartan. I don't think so. Which, by the way, has recently been spotted in Ukraine. The Spartans made their first appearance in the summer. Here you can see them dismount from a truck. Usually the Spartan can carry 7 personnel, with 3 crew members and 4 passengers. Their concept was to provide speed and protection for small teams, such as anti-tank specialists for hit-and-run attacks. And here we can notice a column of 7 FV103 Spartans that took part in the successful Kharkiv counteroffensive in early September. We have the Scorpion and the Scimitar left as candidates. Thing is, Eddie Hall's new toy doesn't match at 100% any of the two. I mean, the bottom part of the Scorpion looks the same, but then the top is more similar to the Scimitar. No! Are you for real? Is it possible that they merged? Yes! I mean, almost. Combat vehicle reconnaissance. In the late 1960s, when the British military needed to replace its aging fleet of Saladin armored cars. They turned towards tracked vehicles. They came up with something pretty ingenious. They said, let's use one type of hull and then use different armament configurations for the turrets depending on what they need, like recon, infantry support, or even light armor roles. Legend says it was inspired by Legos that you can just replace. The new variant of what would become the new CVRT or Combat Vehicle Reconnaissance Tract was the Scorpion. It was designed in 1967 and entered service in 1973. Initially, just 275 of these machines were ordered for the British Army, but that number would eventually swell to 3,000, 1,500 for the UK and 1,500 for the international market. The combination of the Scorpion's light weight, we're talking about 8 tons, and its maneuverability meant that it could keep up with infantry on any surface because of its low ground pressure. Even better, it was light enough to be airlifted quickly on any hotspot. For example, 2 Scorpions could fit in one Hercules C-130. All these characteristics would serve well in the buggy conditions of the Falklands War. These were the only armored vehicles providing support to British infantry during the conflict. One troop was equipped with 4 Scorpions, the other with 4 FV107 Scimitars. On top of it all, the Scorpion was extremely fast. It's still holding the Guinness World Record for the highest top speed for a tank at 82 km per hour, or 51 miles per hour for my Yankee friends. This is why Eddie Hall can even use it on the highway, by allowing 10 different configurations using the same Scorpion base, made the CVRTs economical and simple to build, and equally as easy to maintain in service. As a result, they're still being used today. And here we are. Eventually, the British thought of creating a hybrid, a more Scimitar-like, budget-conscious alternative, the Alvis Saber light tank. The turret from a wheeled FV721 Fox armored reconnaissance vehicle mounted on the hull of a tracked FV101 Scorpion. The vehicle proved successful enough to the service that required a fast, lightly armored reconnaissance platform. So that's why it's also called a tank. It's a light tank meant for reconnaissance duties, and not really an armored fighting vehicle because it cannot carry infantrymen, apart from the crew. The Saber retained its reconnaissance-minded classification and was armed with the 30mm L21 Rarden autocannon. A 7.62mm general-purpose machine gun was fitted as a coaxial anti-infantry weapon. The vehicle carried 160 30mm projectiles in both AP and HE varieties, as well as 3,762mm rounds of ammunition. Sounds like a beast, right? But combat deployment in Yugoslavia in the early 1990s showcased some inherent limitations, at least in the initial version, which were rectified over time. Gunners and commanders complained of a lack of headroom, so they were given domed hatches. The smoke grenade launchers were also deemed insufficient and then doubled up. And lastly, the original 7.62mm belt-fed GPMG fitting was replaced by a more effective 7.62mm L94A1 chain gun system with improved reloading. Despite all these efforts to improve the Saber light tank, in the end the marriage of Fox turret and Scorpion chassis was not successful, and the Saber was withdrawn from British Army service in 2004. Welcome civilian market. Long story short, with a big amount of Saber light tanks taking up space in storage, the British military began selling them on the civilian market. The civilian models are 100% road legal, so if you've got a tracked vehicle license from the UK, you're good to go. Obviously, or sadly for some of you, since it's a civilian model, all the armaments have been removed and replaced by a dummy 30mm Rarden. However, the mount for the chain gun and the twin clusters of smoke grenade launchers remain. I don't know, could be useful in the future, who knows? In the end, how much does this big boy's toy price on the market? It depends. I've seen some listings range between 49 and 59,000 pounds, while some sold for as low as 35,000 pounds. And to be honest, they're all much cheaper than I expected. But perhaps there's a reason why it's so cheap, because there's something else that's very expensive. It's an enormous original 500-liter fuel tank. Do you want to know how much it costs to go to the gas station?
We found out it takes over £1,000 to fill this tank, so we're looking...
£1,000? Oh my god! But at the same time, it makes going to the groceries for a real adventure. So yeah, this is it. The story of how Eddie Hall probably bought a 1972 Alvis Saber light tank. Let me know in the comment section what other military vehicle or equipment you want me to cover next. Thank you for listening. If you're new to this channel, make sure to like and subscribe. And if you want to help support this channel, make sure to check out my Patreon or PayPal. The links are in the description.